Salam alaikum, bonjour, hola, kamusta, and konnichiwa. To all the viewers out there, aside saying hello, language as a whole is an amazing and beautiful thing. As there are many dialects and forms of communication, but sometimes in history, there are languages that are extinct due to the loss of civilizations, forced conducts, or people just don't use it anymore. Either way, let's look into it. Hi, my name is Jessa, and let's look together the top 10 dead languages historians fear the most. Number 10, Ugaritic. Ugaritic, which belongs to the northwestern branch of the Semitic language family, was the language of the ancient city and state of Ugarit, located in the coast of Syria. Although it appears similar to Mesopotamian cuneiform, which writing techniques is borrowed, its symbols and symbol meanings are unrelated. It is the oldest example of the family of West Semitic scripts such as Phoenician, Paleo-Hebrew, and Aramaic alphabets, including the Hebrew alphabet. And the so-called long alphabet has actually 30 letters, while the short alphabet has 22. Other languages, particularly Huron, was occasionally written in the Ugarit area, although not elsewhere. This language is only attested in texts from the last 2 centuries of the Late Bronze Age, 14th to 13th century BCE, when, as well as the writings in the Akkadian language used in the Mesopotamian cuneiform script. The scribes and literati of Ugarit used a cuneiform version of the alphabet to write in their own language on clay tablets. They wrote myths, epics, ritual texts, letters, accounting the records, and contracts in the Ugaritic language, and their mythic and epic compositions are precious testimony to the Syro-Canaanite religion reflected in the Hebrew Bible, and these texts are therefore of great interest to the scholars of the Bible and the Near East. Number 9, Pawnee. The Pawnee language is a Caddoan language traditionally spoken by the Pawnee Native Americans currently inhabiting in north-central, as we know, Oklahoma. Historically, the Pawnee lived along the Platte River is to what we know as Nebraska, and prior to colonization and U.S. expansion, Pawnee was actually spoken by all members of the nation. And the last native speaker was in 2001, Lula Nora Pratt, who sadly passed away in 2001. On the bright side, however, even though I'm sure historians would be pretty chill with this, as of 2007, the Pawnee Nation is actually developing teaching materials for the local high school and for adult language classes, as there are also extensive documentary materials in the language archived at the American Indian Studies Research Institute. The Pawnee language can also be heard spoken in a 2015 movie, as we might know, called The Revenant, and in 2019 and 2020, the Pawnee Nation actually posted online videos teaching the Pawnee language. Number 8, Manchu. Not yet extinct, but Manchu is actually very critically in danger as an East Asian tonganistic language native to the historical region of Manchuria in northeast China. As the traditional native language of the Manchus, it was actually one of the most official languages of the Qing dynasty, ranging from 1636 to 1912 of China. Although today the vast majority of Manchus speak only Mandarin Chinese, several thousands can still speak Manchu as a secondary language through governmental primary education or free classes for adults in classrooms or online. But the Manchu language does enjoy high historical value for historians of China, especially for the Qing dynasty. Manchu language texts supply information that is unavailable in Chinese, and when both Manchu and Chinese versions of a given text exist, they still provide a control for understanding of the Chinese language. Number 7, Akkadian. Akkadian is an extinct East Semitic language that was spoken in ancient Mesopotamia, Akkad, Assyria, Isin, Larsa, Babylonia, and perhaps Dilmun. From the 3rd millennium BC until its gradual replacement in common use by the Old Aramaic among Assyrians and Babylonians from 8th century BC, Akkadian's proper names were actually first attested in Sumerian texts from around mid-3rd millennium BC. From about 25th century BC, texts fully written in Akkadian began to appear, and by the 10th century BC, 2 variants dialect formed of the same language were also in use in Assyria and Babylonia, also known as Assyrian or Babylonian, respectively. The bulk of the preserved material is from this later period, corresponding to the Near Eastern Iron Age, and in total, hundreds of thousands of texts and text fragments have been excavated, covering a vast textual tradition of religious and mythological narratives, legal texts, scientific works, and personal correspondence, political, civil, and military events. It also included economic tracts and many other examples. Number 6, Ancient Greek. Ancient Greek include the forms of the Greek language used in ancient Greece and the ancient world from around 1500 BC to 300 BC. The ancient Greek was a pluricentric language divided into many dialects, and the main dialect group are Attic and Ionic, Aeolic, Acrodopyrite, and Doric, many of them which are several subdivisions. Some of these dialects are found in standardized literary form of literature, while others are attested only in inscriptions. The origin, actually early form of the development of the Hellenic language family are not well understood because of the lack of contemporaneous evidence. Several theories exist about about what the Hellenic dialect groups may have existed between the divergence of early Greek-like speech from the common Proto-Indo-European language and the Classic period. They actually have the same general outline but differ in some of the details, as the only attested dialects from this period are Mycenaean Greek, but its relationship to the historical dialects and the historical circumstance of the times really just imply the overall groups that already existed in some form. The Greeks of this period believed that there were three major divisions of all Greek people: Dorians, Aeolians, and Ionians, also including Athenians, or Athen people, each with their own defining and distinctive dialects, allowing for their oversight of Akkadian and obscure mountain dialect and Cypriot, far from the center of Greek scholarship. And this division of people and language is actually quite similar to the language results of the modern archaeological linguistic investigation. Number 5, Coptic. Coptic is a group of closely related to Egyptian dialects that is kind of close to modern times, representing the most recent developments of the Egyptian language and historically spoken by the Copts starting from the 3rd century AD in Roman Egypt. Coptic has no native speakers today, though, although it remains in a daily use in the sense of liturgic language in the Coptic Orthodox Church and the Coptic Catholic Church. Coptic is today spoken more mainly in the Catholic Church, as long with the modern Standard Arabic, and the language is spoken only in Egypt and historically has only had little influence outside of the territory, except for monasteries located in Nubia. Coptic's most noticeable linguistic impact has been on the various dialects of Egyptian Arabic, which is characterized by Coptic substratum in lexical, morphological, and phonological features. Number 4, Latin. A lot of people know that Latin as a conversationalist-based language isn't a common tongue anymore, but of course gotta mention it, as it's always been used as a source of demonic possessions in films and movie depictions. Whenever someone is speaking in tongues, it's usually just basically Old Latin. But the source of Latin is an Indo-European language in an Italic group and is ancestral to the modern Romantic language. During the Middle Ages, as until comparatively recent times, Latin was the language most widely used in the West for scholarly and literary purposes. For most of the time that it was used, it would actually be considered a dead language in the modern definition of it, because of the fact that it lacks native speakers speaking Latin, despite being used extensively and actively. Latin has greatly influenced the English language historically and contributed many words to the English lexicon, particularly after the Christianization of the Anglo-Saxons and the Norman conquests. Latin and ancient Greek roots are especially used in English descriptions of theology, science disciplines, especially in anatomy and taxonomy, medicine, and of course, law. Number 3, Aramaic. Aramaic language, a Semitic language of the Northern Central or Northern Western group that was originally spoken by the ancient Middle Eastern people known as Armenians or Armenians. It was mostly closely related to Hebrew, Syriac, and Phoenician, as it was written in a script derived from the Phoenician alphabet. The Aramaic language are now considered in danger and considered basically sort of like just a dead language, since several varieties of the language is only used by the older generation. Researchers are working to record and analyze all of the remaining varieties of the Neo-Aramaic language before they, or in case, become extinct, as early Aramaic inscriptions dates from the 11th century BC, replacing it among the earliest languages to be written down. At its height, Aramaic was spoken in what is now known as Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Palestine, Jordan, Kuwait, and part of the southeast and south central of Turkey, northern parts of the Arabian Peninsula, and parts of the northwest Iran, as well as the southern Caucasus, having gradually replaced several other related Semitic languages. According to the Babylonian Talmud, the language spoken by Adam, the Bible's first human, was actually Aramaic. Number 2, Sanskrit. Sanskrit is a classical language belonging to the Indo-Aryan branch of the Indo-European languages, as it arose in South Asia after its predecessor languages had diffused from the northwest in the late Bronze Age. Sanskrit is the sacred language of Hinduism and the language of the classical Hindu philosophy and a historical text of Buddhism and Jainism. It was a link language in ancient and medieval South Asia, and upon transmission of Hindu and Buddhist culture to the Southeast Asia, East Asia, and Central Asia in the early medieval era. It also became a language of religion and high culture and of the political elites in some of these regions. As a result, Sanskrit had a lasting effect on the languages of South Asia, Southeast Asia, and East Asia, especially in their formal learned vocabularies. Sanskrit is considered a dead language because nobody in the world really speaks it as their primary language anymore, because it is a language of classical Indian literature, kind of like Shakespearean, English. However, Sanskrit is still used, widely studied, and understood by linguistic and academics. Number 1, Sumerian. Sumerian is the language of the ancient Sumer, as it is one of the oldest attested languages dating back to at least 2900 BC. It is accepted by the local language isolate and has been spoken in ancient Mesopotamia in the area that is now known as modern-day Iraq. Sumerian is an agglutinating language with no known relatives. It was spoken in South Iraq until it died out, probably around 2000 BC, giving away Babylonian. But it has survived as a scholarly and liturgical language, much like medieval Latin, until the very end of the cuneiform of the late first millennium BC. Some linguistics can read it as a cuneiform script as it's been deciphered, however, no one can really truly speak it since we don't really know how it's pronounced. Anyways, that's all for today. Thank you for joining me. My name is Jessa. Be sure to like and subscribe and try to learn a new language today. Why not? All the best. Salamat po.